I'm Trevor.
I'm Traxel.
Welcome to the Red Squadron podcast. Welcome back, guys. Thank you for joining us for week 5 of the podcast.
That's crazy.
It's been a long time. We're hopefully either welcoming you to the crew or you've been here a while now. So thank you for joining us. We have some great topics today. We're going to get things started off by talking about our thoughts on the Skeleton Crew. At the time of recording this, we've seen 3 episodes of the show. So don't blame us if we don't mention something that comes out in week 4 or 5.
It's likely.
Yeah.
It's likely.
So, Traxel, what are your thoughts on the Skeleton Crew?
I mean, I've really enjoyed it so far. I think it is a great show. I know it's a little more geared toward kids. Yeah. The 4 main characters are kids, plus Jude Law's character, Jad Na, who I think is stealing the show for me right now. He's the character I'm most intrigued by. And I just absolutely love the piracy vibe to it. Hondo being one of my favorite characters from the Clone Wars. And seeing this piracy come out in live action is really cool. And it's been an aspect of Star Wars for a long time. Smugglers, pirates. It's just really cool.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Piracy is super cool to see, and it does feel like that. It's that Hondo vibe a little bit. And I wonder if he maybe...
I would love for him to show up. It would make sense too. I would have no problem with that. It might be a little fan servicey, but I would have no problem with that.
Yeah. I think for me, I've really enjoyed it so far. I think the biggest things for me are I love SM-33. I think he's a great droid. He stands up there as like iconic and unique, just like K2 from Rogue One. I think they did a fantastic job of making the design something we haven't seen, as well as like the personality of the droid itself. He's definitely part of the ship, part of the crew.
Good Parts of the Caribbean reference there.
Yeah. Great movies, by the way. That's another Disney thing. Disney, if you're watching, we watched that too. I think another great thing is how refreshing it feels to me.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is it's brand new and it feels new. Sometimes with Star Wars you can feel like you're seeing the same thing sometimes. And with this, it feels really refreshing. I love the new characters, and I'm really curious to see if Jad Na is actually a Jedi.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a gimmick somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're feeling about that right now.
Yeah. I think he's not a Jedi, but you're wondering if he's Force
sensitive. Yes. Yeah.
So
he already admitted he wasn't a Jedi.
Yeah.
So
I mean, piracy and like the theme of trickery is certainly there. So I'm not ready to put my eggs in one basket yet. I don't even want to take a guess and be flamed. I think I could very easily see him lying and this be a trick or a scam of some kind, but it wouldn't be uncommon. Like there's obviously thousands of Force users out there. They just aren't trained necessarily.
Yeah, and the Force is in everybody, technically.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm interested to learn the backstory of At-Aten a little bit, see what the treasure there holds. I don't know if this will have any larger connection to Star Wars. I kind of hope it does, but part of it's because it's so new and refreshing. I kind of also don't want it to. I'm kind of torn at that right now.
I think, me personally, I'm in the boat of I don't want it to tie in. I think you could tie in, if you tied in anything, tie in like already on the fringe parts. So like Hondo, he's not too involved. I mean, he comes up in Rebels a lot, and he's in that, and he's in the Clone Wars, but like cinematically, movies, live action, is it.
Yeah.
So I think he's such an out there character for most people that you could just be introduced to him and feel like you're not missing a beat.
Yeah.
I don't need the Skywalkers to show up. I don't need like a Jedi Sith battle. I'm fine with a fun, campy story. And I think what's great about it is I feel like you can show it to anybody. Somebody that is on the fence of whether or not they want to watch Star Wars. And this actually ties back into like our how you should watch Star Wars. I would almost flip that and say, don't care, start with this.
Really?
It feels like a different universe. It feels like the Goonies. You don't have to know what's going on. It's an easy watch. And it really is just like, boom, it's fun, it's short, it's sweet. If you're curious about more things, let's watch a movie.
Yeah, and Hondo, He's pretty old. He would be pretty old at this point, so I don't know if he would still be alive. I would love that, obviously. And I think you said it best. I think it is, you don't need to have any previous Star Wars knowledge to watch this. Mm-hmm. I mean, does it make the experience better a little bit? Maybe. But you definitely do not need to watch all the Star Wars movies before starting this. Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe it even adds a little bit of mystery because he's like, Jedi Temple, and you're like,
what the heck is that?
What's a Jedi?
Oh, a Jedi moves things. That's interesting.
Yeah. So maybe there's something there, but at the end of the day, I would recommend watching it and give it a shot, even if you're like hardcore, like, I'm a purist. I only love like the originals. Like it's just an all-around fun watch.
Yeah, I don't think Star Wars fans should ever not watch new content. You should always watch it. It's something you love, and the universe is expanding all the time. It's something Disney's brought us, but it's a good watch. I don't think there's any issue with it. It doesn't tarnish any previous characters. It's all brand new. So I don't think you should have any attitude that it's going to be bad beforehand.
Yeah. I have heard a complaint with like the whole suburb thing. Let me just say this. There are thousands of planets in the galaxy.
Yeah.
And there are bound to be one that is more similar to our lifestyle. Obviously the houses are still different. Mm-hmm. They have like almost speeder bike type things instead of bicycles. So like I have no problem with that. No. And you know, there's like a 70s diner on Coruscant.
Yeah, I mean,
so
Dex.
Yeah, good man. But I'm totally fine with that. I think be willing to like look past that and just accept it for its own thing. Don't ride too much into it's not like what you've seen before. I think that's what makes it good.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely give it a watch. Highly recommend.
All right, and we will be right back.
Welcome back to the Red Squadron podcast. Our main topic today is a very controversial one. We're going to be doing a deep dive into the sequel trilogy, episodes 7 through 9. Kind of just talking about our highlights, the lowlights, pros and cons of all movies. Trevor, do you want to start us off with some thoughts on the sequel trilogy in general?
Yeah. So I guess I'm just going to start with like my raw overall feeling. I think for me it's good. It's nowhere near great, and it's nowhere near the top end of other Star Wars media for me. Yeah. But I'll go as far to say I'm a pretty optimistic guy when it comes to Star Wars. I just love seeing new content. I think anything to expand the universe is good. I do think I disagree with some things that I'll get into in a little bit. But for me, nothing in Star Wars is bad, so that's why I say it's good. We're a very biased group here. So it's not, but it does not hold the same level of greatness and that kind of awe feeling and an immersive feeling that the other movies feel for me.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. It's definitely not at the top of Star Wars for me. I think they did some good things early on, and it kind of tapered off. I always go back to the director changes. Yeah. Going from JJ to Rian Johnson and then back to Abrams was a bad decision in my opinion. I think they had two different ideas of what this trilogy was going to look like, and I think that caused a lot of issues for them.
Yeah. So I always want to speak to that. So here's my little spiel on that. I agree that changing directors changes too much. Yeah. I think if we look at it, you can see it throughout the movies. You see one character start to develop in The Force Awakens, and then a whole different, almost out of nowhere, subplot in The Last Jedi. And then they start to go back to maybe a little bit of their Force Awakens actions, or even like Rose, big, huge part of The Last Jedi, next to no effect in The Rise of Skywalker. So I think that's something that's definitely prevalent, and you can tell they changed. But what I do want to say is, you know, knowing what I know about films, I am a firm believer that directors should have creative say over their movie. I think maybe where I disagree with a lot of fans is a lot of people think like Ryan should have I don't know if it's Ryan or Rian, but a lot of people think that he should have, no, you got to continue with what J.J. Abrams was doing. I don't fault him for that at all. When you're hired and you've put in the years in Hollywood that he's put in, you should be allowed to have creative say over what you're directing. I think it is more on the executive side and a lapse of judgment on them to switch directors midway through. But I do not have a problem with Ryan. And as much as I don't understand some of the changes from a story narrative point, I 100% support him being allowed to make the changes that he did, whether I agree with it story-wise or not.
I really like that explanation, actually, because if I was directing a Star Wars movie, I would want to make it my own and put my handprint all over it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Ryan did. But when you do this trilogy, they have to be connected.
Yeah.
And he just went a complete opposite direction of what J.J. Abrams wanted. And so if Disney or J.J. Abrams wanted to go in a certain direction, he should have had more oversight over The Last Jedi.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that like Marvel does really well. Like Jon Favreau, like oversees the big picture. He's always, in those credits because he's overseeing it. But what you did was you took two directors and you let them do their own thing. Which again, objectively, somebody that knows a lot about film, I'm okay with it. I don't believe that it led to the best trilogy, and I believe it led to inconsistencies in characters. But like you said, if I've worked my butt off to work in Hollywood to get a big direction role, and I'm a fan of Star Wars, and I want to put my own spin on it, I have that right as the director.
Yeah.
And I'm all for it. So I'm not going to put any of the blame on either of the directors because it would basically be like you directing the first, them giving me my big shot, and you being like, you're just going to do it how I tell you. Like, the whole point of the director is to be creative and to make the actual decisions. When you're on a set, the director makes the final call and says, we're doing this.
Yeah.
We're, ad-lib here, I'm changing the script. And that's their job, and that's the fun part of it, and that's where the passion in those projects comes from. But I do agree on the surface, it hurts the story, and it hurts the characters overall.
And I think the biggest problem I have with fan reaction to the sequel trilogy is they're saying they're going to not watch any Disney Star Wars again because they ruined all their favorite characters. We talked about this during Skeleton Crew. You got to give everything new a shot. Don't let these sequel trilogies affect your future opinion of new Star Wars content. But also, I think... Shoot, I just froze.
I think Star Wars has always been something that is unique, is not like any other form of media. And that's only going to keep happening if we're willing to experiment in good ways or bad. I think you're not always going to have a project that everybody loves. But I think it's very hard to argue that people aren't out there that do like the sequels. Like, some people, that is their Star Wars that they do.
Because they're young kids. Those are the first Star Wars movies they are watching.
Yeah.
And if we take it back, the prequel reaction, we thought it was great, but we were just kids, so we couldn't make our opinions expressed.
Yeah. So I think for sure people are out there that like it. So I think you need to understand as a fan that you are a Star Wars fan. You're not an original trilogy fan. You're not a prequel trilogy fan. I want more buy-in from, you like some more than the others.
Yes.
But to say that certain movies don't exist in your head, for me is like, somebody likes that. And there is good in every movie. I promise there was a scene in every movie that when I was in the theater, I'm like, that's great. Or that feels like Star Wars to me. And it's no different with some of these things that we'll talk about in a little bit.
And I think people need to remember their feeling after watching episode 7.
Yeah.
I loved episode 7 when I first saw it. I was like, that introduction to Kylo Ren, freezing the bullet, I was like, oh my god, this is going to be some great Star Wars. Rey's vision scene. There are a lot of good moments in Force Awakens that I think were tarnished by 8 and 9 in fans' opinions. But it had so much potential, I think, is the big point with Force Awakens. I don't know how you feel about Force Awakens, if you want to expand on that.
Force Awakens is definitely the top of the trilogy for me. It feels a little more like iconic Star Wars, It obviously follows the plot of A New Hope. Pretty similar, right?
Which I was okay with.
Yeah.
It was familiar. I was like, this is almost a modern version of New Hope. I like it.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, obviously familiar is a great word because it feels familiar, but then pushes the bounds of comfortableness a little bit in other areas without feeling like you're totally losing the feeling of Star Wars. I guess I'll piggyback into this. It brings back some of the original cast, obviously, Leia and Han.
Did you feel that as fan service, or did you want them to go a different direction?
I think you had to bring them back, just because if you don't bring them back at all, it's like they're such a big part, and only being how many years after? Not that many.
Yeah.
It would be like, well, they're obviously still alive, and we know that as fans. I guess my question to you on that is, do you feel like it expanded their characters, or it took away / ruined them from their original trilogy to the sequels?
Han was not ruined for me at all. He went back to his smuggler ways, which I think made sense in a way. I mean, if your son turns to the dark side and slaughters children and commits crimes like that, I think people react in different ways, and he did that. I think that his decision to go back to smuggling was justified. Do I wish he was still close with Leia at the beginning?
Yeah.
Of course I do. But I don't think it hurt his legacy at all. He just reverted back to somebody he was comfortable with.
Yeah.
Leia, I don't think her legacy was tarnished a little bit for me.
In The Force Awakens or later in the trilogy?
Later in the trilogy.
Yeah.
And I don't say this lightly. I think her passing away for the last movie had a huge impact on that. There were some lines that didn't necessarily fit, it seemed like. They were kind of forcing it in there a little bit. So I would have loved to see her circle complete, because I know there probably was more training with Rey involved and more scenes with her. And she would have been way more involved. So I think that hurt her a little bit, and rest in peace, Carrie Fisher. She is forever our princess. Luke is the topic everybody wants to talk about, though. Man, I struggle with this one, because I would never picture Luke as somebody who would turn his back on Leia or Han.
Yeah.
I think he's always been that person. In 4, 5, 6, he is the person who does good every time. He wants to do the right thing. And then he turns his back on the Jedi. And Mark Hamill, his famous quote saying, Luke would never do that.
Yeah.
That's not what a Jedi would do. Hurt even more, because fans were like, see, we told you. Even the actor said that. So, I don't know, what are your thoughts on Luke and his legacy with the sequel trilogy?
I think if you take it from the original trilogy into the sequel, I think you are definitely shell-shocked of this is not the Luke that we remember. I think they went with a modern trope of Hollywood of the disgruntled elder mentor trope, and I think that's a real thing, nowadays, where
you get old, you get grumpy.
Yeah, and even I don't know if you're watching Cobra Kai at all, the show, but there's some things coming out with Mr. Miyagi now and there, it's he's not the perfect old mentor. It just seems like that's a modern trope in Hollywood, to take the hero, the shining example in the past, give him a little grit, give him a little I don't like things anymore, I'm a changed man for the worse type feeling. So I think they played right into that. They're guilty of that. I think from a fan perspective, it didn't make sense why he would do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Mark Hamill's coming from. He is a fan. He loves Star Wars. He is a fan, and he's portrayed that character for so long that I do think those actors should have a say in it, where my character goes, because that's who they are.
Right.
That's who they identify as. That's what they're the biggest fans of. But I do think it hurts him quite a bit to go the way that they went.
I think he has a little bit of a redemption at the end when he does revert back to his old ways. I think most people have a problem with his death on screen just fading away. After one of the coolest scenes in Star Wars, to be honest. I mean, the Force projection was amazing.
Yeah.
I don't think we've never seen that, and I think that speaks to Luke's power as a Jedi. But I think he would deserved a better death than that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
He was by himself. I mean, he would want to go out protecting the Resistance.
Yes.
But I don't like the way that he just faded away.
Yeah. I think...
Overexerted himself.
Yes.
Lost the will to live, just like his mother.
It happens. Happens to the best of them. I feel like the biggest thing that upsets me as a Luke fan and as a Jedi fan is his turn on Kylo. Because you go from a character that is the only one in the galaxy to see good in Darth Vader to somebody that sees a bit of darkness in Kylo in a dream while Kylo's sleeping
that's
and
probably
goes to kill him.
Yeah. It was just a dream.
Like,
I guess Anakin's dreams messed him up pretty good, so it's not uncommon for that to happen, but it was one time.
But that's even more of a reason, like, you come from the family, the most, misguided, fluctuating family in this history of Star Wars. You know that it takes probably the right mentor, the right connection, maybe even in this case, a family member, to bring that person to the light, to guide them past the dark, to balance their emotions. And your reaction instead was to essentially attack him. I think that is the least Luke thing that he does in the sequels.
Is that enough justification for Kylo Ren to turn to the dark side, do you think? That one
it
moment?
hurts.
Yeah.
It's parallel to Anakin feeling like he was mistrusted, the Jedi don't trust him, right? And they're looking down on him, like he can't take that responsibility on. Kylo sees the face of his mentor, his relative, with a lightsaber above his head about to slice him in half. That would be enough to cause me to react in such a way that I'm filled with anger, or especially fear, obviously.
Or easily seduced by the dark side with Snoke.
Yes.
And we can talk about Snoke. His character. His introduction, I loved him in The Force Awakens. I was like, alright, he's the big bad.
Yep.
And everybody wanted to know, who is he? What's his background? What is your opinion on the character of Snoke? I know it's flushed out in a few Bad Batch episodes a little bit.
Yeah. Literally in my notes for this, in a bullet point says, "What is up with Snoke?" I'm like, and I think that's how most fans feel. Maybe that's the change in the director's thing. Who knows what was in JJ's plans originally, like if he had Snoke staying for the 3 movies and then Ryan's like, he's dead. And like his death certainly adds something to like Kylo's character. I do think like killing your master as a Sith, it's a very Sith thing to do. It's very like, okay, yep, it's my time now. I think it makes sense creatively, but it created such a vacuum for the villain for 3 that they didn't. We'll get into that. They were like, what are you gonna do with that? Snoke in general, they did a great job of creating a lot of mystery around him. Who's this character? What is he? What's he stand for? How's he compared to the other big bads in Star Wars? But I don't think his ending made sense. And I don't, honestly, his power also confused me. He seemed like very, very strong.
Oh, yeah.
But then he
was light years away when he choked out Hux.
Yes. But then he just... I get that they're doing like in Kylo's mind, he's like, you're turning on the lightsaber, and he's like, but it's literally right next to him. I feel like with that power, you know it's coming.
Yeah.
The way he went out seemed strange, so I don't know. What did you think?
I think people who liked Snoke and liked his character, they always talk back to the original trilogy saying, well, we didn't know who Palpatine was. Well, duh, we didn't know who Palpatine was. This was a brand new thing. It was brand new Star Wars. And then we have the issue with who is Snoke, and everybody wants to know. It's because we have the history.
Yep.
And I think that's a big part that people just glance over. And knowing we have this history, there's got to be some explanation for him. Why is he so obsessed with Luke Skywalker? Other than he's just a big bad and knows of Luke Skywalker. There's like, Luke Skywalker is his number 1 threat.
Yeah.
So I feel like there had to be some fleshing out of Snoke, in my opinion. And the Bad Batch didn't do it for me necessarily. All it did was show the cloning that we already saw in Rise of Skywalker. And that power vacuum after he died, I think I don't know if they planned on bringing Palpatine back in the original, when they originally planned this out.
My gut would say no. I
think Rian Johnson had a plan of Kylo being the main villain and him turning fully to the dark side. Mm-hmm. And I would have loved that. I think Adam Driver did an amazing job. He is one of the biggest highlights for me in the sequel trilogy. I would have loved for him to be the main villain. Yeah. Would have been pretty cool to me.
Yes. I agree. I think they had separate ideas again. I think, Rian, killing off Snoke probably is knowing that he's like, okay, Kylo's going to take over. Mm-hmm. It would almost be like the alternate story as if Vader had killed Palpatine, right? Okay, now what's this guy going to do? I think...
Unless killing your master makes you turn good.
Yeah, could. We haven't seen. But certainly I don't think it was in Abrams' plan. It doesn't seem. Because in my opinion, if you were going to bring back Palpatine and try and do it the right way, which I'm not sure there is yet, you would have to drop little hints along the way, right? Like we learned in the trailer, right?
Yeah, we learned in the trailer. Yeah,
and then you really speedily are just like Snoke's a clone, and then you retcon all the other media. You're like, it's in Bad Batch.
The answer to some Star Wars plot holes is always more Star Wars.
Yeah,
but they explained it so badly in Episode 9. Somehow, Palpatine returned. Yeah, it's not even just Palpatine returned. Somehow, like, come on.
Yeah. Again, and then they try and go back and fix it after. Mm-hmm. But they're like, oh, he had this, but he had the plan. He had the, and like I think in Legends he did have a plan. I forget what it was called, but he did have a plan to return a little bit, or have like his mind in other things, but not in the way that they did it in the sequel trilogy.
Right.
And I think bringing him back hurts a character that's not even in the sequel trilogy. It hurts Anakin. It does hurt Anakin because Anakin was the chosen one. He starts to destroy the Sith. He did. Mm-hmm. If you bring back a different Sith like Snoke, it doesn't hurt. There's always going to be bad, good rises and bad to meet it. But bringing back his villain, the guy that groomed him, the guy that turned him into what he was, that Vader then sacrificed himself to destroy, feels a little bit of like we're digging up somebody's grave here to make a little more coin, and I didn't like that.
No, and if you watch the first episode, Anakin is my favorite character, and we talked a little bit about this, but I think it does ruin his story a little bit, and he is the chosen one. I have no doubt about that in my mind. Rebels, they say Luke is the chosen one. So I don't like that there's multiple chosen ones that they keep on putting out here. If you want to make the argument that Rey's the chosen one, I'm never going to buy it. Never.
Yeah, objectively, like, it's like, okay, yeah, she destroyed the Sith, but you forced that to happen. Like, when it was written, when you're referring to the chosen one, it's more than likely Anakin. I understand Luke a little bit because it's still like when it was written, kind of, but you can't force somebody then years later to become the chosen one. Rey is a good, strong character on her own. You don't need to make her something that she's not. Yeah. And Ian McKellen is the Palpatine actor, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
He's great.
He's amazing.
So, from a certain standpoint, I understand when you're like, oh crap, what do we do? Mm-hmm. Like, at least you're bringing back somebody that is absolutely killer in that role. But you needed to find any way not to.
And the last film just felt like they were trying to win us over with fan service.
Yes.
Bringing Lando back, and I love seeing Lando, but it was one role I don't know if he fit necessarily. He kind of just seemed to show up.
Yeah.
I thought he would have been more involved from the start, to be honest. Because I think we see a transformation from him in Empire Strikes Back to Return of the Jedi, and then he's back to normal.
Well, I feel like they made there's a line that like he was always part of the Resistance, but he was.
Oh, he was just in the background doing things.
Or undercover. There might be that line. Don't quote me on it, but I feel like there is. My guess is there is. But yeah, that's still kind of a poor explanation to it. Like a grizzled Lando is something that you want more of. Like that's cool. Does he keep up his charisma? And he does. The actor's great, but not enough of him.
No, not enough at all. And Episode 9 has some cool moments. I love Rey's use of the Force lightning. I think the Force lightning in the sequel trilogy was amazing throughout.
Yeah.
Great cinematography. But the story just falls apart a little bit, and they're trying to put together pieces all the time. Yeah.
And honestly, I think it's on my notes, one of my biggest things is Finn's character. I think he started off with some of the most potential in Star Wars. You take literally a stormtrooper, in this case a First Order trooper, right?
Same difference.
And, he's very fearful, he's very, cowardly, he's like, okay, I gotta get out of here. And he does. And then you see him grow into, I'm going to help the rebellion a little bit. So, you see that turn of, okay, bad to good. You see him, what appear to be signs pointing towards he's going to become a Jedi.
Yeah.
Or is at least Force sensitive.
Yeah.
And he has, I think, for the most part, they did him right in The Force Awakens.
Oh, I think absolutely.
The next two movies, there's a meme of all he does is yell, Rey! Rey!
Rey!
Yeah. John Boyega is way too talented to be that side character. You put him off on, this off storyline with Rose. And again, no fault to any actors. The actors do what they're told. They're great. I think they flesh out the characters how they're written. But I just don't see why he's there instead of having a bigger role. And then, for sure, in The Rise of Skywalker, you potentially had the potential to have an arc where ex-Stormtrooper turns good, turns rebellion, turns Jedi or Padawan, leads a legion of other ex-Stormtroopers that he meets on that planet to overthrow the Empire.
I like that.
That's a pretty dang good arc.
Yeah. I think Rose almost ruined his legacy a little bit by not letting him sacrifice himself. I would have loved for Finn to sacrifice himself in The Last Jedi, because I think that would have been a complete arc. Yeah. Somebody who wants to run away to giving his life. Yeah. I think that would have been a phenomenal end to him. Yeah. And it's again, Rise of Skywalker just does him so wrong. I feel like he doesn't have enough dialogue. He doesn't have enough contribution. And they literally they keep you on the edge all movie of he wants to talk to Rey, and it's clearly about how he's Force sensitive. Yeah. And they never do. Yeah. So for me, he's one of the biggest losses of that trilogy and what it could have been. And that's actually, we talked about in another episode, before this actually, what we want to see out of the Rey movie. I would like to see Finn done some justice compared to what he was done here. And I wish that trio, because every trilogy has their iconic trio. In the prequels, you got Obi-Wan, Anakin, Padme. Original, Luke, Han, Leia. This one, it's not there. It's two duos, and both is with Finn. Yep. You got Finn and Poe, who had great chemistry in Force Awakens, and you got Finn and Rey. They never really intertwine. No. And
they hug as if they know each other really well.
Yeah, but all we see is Poe get under Rey's skin all the time, and Rey gets under his skin all the time.
So there's not the iconic trio.
No.
I think you have three great actors. Love them all.
Yes. Daisy Ridley's great. Oscar Isaac. Yeah. Great.
So I think you had the potential, but it didn't overlap enough for it to make sense to me.
And I love seeing a great pilot like Poe. I thought
when he showed up, he murked we were counting that thing in the theater. He was just killing everybody. Actually, and then
took on a dreadnought by himself.
Kills 3 TIE fighters, shoots a bunch of people on the ground, goes back to killing TIE fighters.
Yeah.
And they're like, "That's one good pilot. That's the best pilot I've ever seen."
All right, Anakin versus Poe.
Hold on, 1v1 or who do I think is a better pilot? Different.
Who do you think's the better pilot? And then if you had to pick in a 1v1.
Okay. Typically, I like to give the edge to a Force user. I think it gives you that kind of little edge, right? It's basically like if he can't feel the Force, he's not as in tune to certain things. So I'd like to say Anakin, based on that Force user aspect and his high regard in the galaxy and within like the Jedi Order and clones as a pilot.
Yeah.
You feel a little differently?
I think it would be really close. I give the edge to Poe in dogfighting.
Okay.
But in a mass scale war, I'll take Anakin every time.
Yeah. I would agree. And it's hard to judge. You know, we don't see Anakin pilot as much. If you look at just what we see, like he does big feats. You know, he destroys the droid starship when he's very young. Plot armor a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that was sort of luck.
Yeah.
He was lucky he got inside of that starship, so...
Well, he spun.
Yeah, it was a good trick.
Yeah. So, I don't think we see as much of him being a skilled pilot. I mean, well, he makes a very insane maneuver to knock the buzz droids off Obi-Wan's ship.
Yeah,
so he's got accuracy with his starfighter. But you do see Poe in action more. Comes through, swoops in, just destroys everybody, right? Like, man, like that is an ace pilot.
Yeah. Yep.
So you do see that more, and you do see maybe the combat more. But I think if we looked at all media, there's probably more tales of Anakin being like phenomenal at starship piloting.
He has the reputation of that.
Yes.
But in my opinion, I think he's a one-trick pony. Spinning.
That's all he does.
Spins in the first one, spins in the third one.
That's all we see. That's a good point. I mean, he does pilot like the Twilight or whatever. Twilight, that junker in the animated Clone Wars movie.
And he took out Admiral Trench, which I forgot about.
Yes.
That just rang a bell. That was pretty impressive.
Yeah. So... they're definitely both ace pilots. I think we disagree a tiny bit on like I think the Force sensitivity boosts him to an exceptional pilot, whereas Poe is like outstanding, almost one of one. Dogfight, like a true 1v1, it's tough because we've seen more of that skill set in Poe.
Yeah.
Not to say that Anakin couldn't do it. It's just I feel like largely Poe looks more proficient in it, in straight up killing. Okay, I gotta get this guy before he gets me. Seems more like Poe's.
I think if you simulated it like 100 times, it might be 50-50.
Yeah.
To be honest. But
it's definitely, I don't think it's super lopsided. It's not like a 90-10, 80-20.
Yeah.
It's definitely somewhere in that middle.
Let us know in the comments who you think would win.
Yes. This is a great opportunity for you guys to prove us wrong if you disagree.
Yeah.
Last thing I have for you, Trax. Is it worth watching? Are the sequels worth sitting down, investing the time, and watching?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I'm a sucker for all things Star Wars, and if you think it did the characters wrong, there's still interesting things happening.
Yeah.
If you can put that to the side and not let it bother you too much, it still is good in its own right. If they just came out by themselves and you didn't have the original trilogy, I bet it would be looked on a lot different.
Yeah. Oh, that's because they follow somewhat of a similar trajectory to the originals.
Yeah.
So when those originals came out, some of the flaws are what we're pointing out with these ones. So without getting too much into that, I would agree. I think it's always worth the watch. I think kind of my number one pet peeve when it comes to Star Wars and even other fandoms is like not giving something a chance or trying to maybe ruin the experience for somebody else. Star Wars speaks to many different people for many different reasons, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah.
Like, everybody has something. A new generations of kids grew up with this, and I'm thankful that they got something to grow up with like we did.
Yeah. I think even for future Star Wars projects, one thing I really want to highlight for the fans out there is don't be bashing the actor for their job. They're doing what the director tells them, and for the most part, these are good actors. Star Wars and Disney, they don't just go out and cast anybody.
Yeah.
These are talented people. And I hate seeing the treatment Rose had, even if I wasn't the biggest fan of her character. I thought she did a great job acting. You saw it with Jar Jar Binks and his actor, and it's just unfortunate, but I just want to highlight, don't be that person.
Yeah. They do the best job that they are given, and I 100% agree with that. I think I'm predicting now, years in advance, that there's going to be the resurgence for some of these sequel trilogy characters like there was for Hayden. Like, the generation that grew up with them, when they get the voice on social media, it's going to be like, I love that character. I love the way that they were portrayed. I love Daisy Ridley. I love Oscar Isaac, John Boyega, whoever it may be, and I hope that happens.
And I think it will. I really do. I think Daisy Ridley will get a lot of appreciation later, and we already covered last episode how excited we are for that new trilogy, so.
Yeah. Well, that is it for us here, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed. Feel free to let us know in the comments what you think about the sequel trilogy. Definitely let us know who you think would win in that 1v1 dogfight. I personally want to read the answers and actually be proven wrong, or have somebody be like, well, in this issue of the comics that you haven't seen, he does this. That's great. I'd love to learn from you guys. So thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.